Welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So today's session, I'm just going to go over a pretty high overview of AutogenAI, our platform, and speak to how AI is being incorporated into the bidding, tendering, and proposal writing processes. I'm conscious that it's quite a diverse range of industries that are involved in this process, and there's certain workflows that different companies and clients will use. I'm going to keep it quite generic, but if you have any questions about a specific feature or something that you guys are doing in your own business, feel free to pop them in the Q&A chat bot. But with that, I will share my screen and get started. Awesome. So AutogenAI, who are we and why do we exist? Let's start there. We are a bidding software, AI software, and we exist to fill the gap in the market between expediting the bid writing process. So that accounts for any of those compliance schedules. Maybe it's a long form response question, any kind of mundane, long, tedious questions that are keeping you away from project delivery. That's what we ensure to deliver value in. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. I guess there's two real ways in which I foresee the bid process. You've got your short form response questions. So that's those returnable schedules, compliance documents, security reviews, anything of a short templated nature, a rinse and repeat nature. And then you've got those more complicated paragraph long form response questions. So those ones are things like methodologies, capability statements, CVs, anything that's a bit more tedious and bespoke. There's pretty much the breakup of the two there. So just to begin with the platform, basically there's a little bit of setup that goes into it. It's two parts really. The first is what's called answer bank. So within your answer bank, this is where you would have those rinse and repeat gold standard questions. Anything of a similar nature that you're constantly responding to, this is where they would live. And this is really helpful for that compliance security review section. I'll show you how the AI then incorporates these answers through and adapts for any changes in future questions. The second part to that is your library. So the library, there's two ways you can populate it. One is a direct SharePoint integration. The other is just a manual upload. What you would typically put into your library is anything that would be of value to reference for any new questions. So that can look like past bids. It can look like case studies, white papers, knowledge management pieces, anything of value for a future bid would exist and live in this library here. So that's really the two areas of setup before you begin. Just before we go into a more typical workflow, my background is I've done a lot of bid writing at Deloitte in Brisbane. So more of a management consultant type of a bid, but I work with a lot of our construction clients here at AutogenAI. So I'm going to tailor this demonstration for an example construction bid. But if you have specific questions on certain features that might be more relevant to yourself, pop them in and I can answer those towards the end. So within the settings, the final part, this is where you have the ability to really focus and narrow the lens of the AI, particularly in your library. So you can see on the right here, at the moment, we've got it generating from all the documents in my library. You can then narrow down the focus of that to a particular folder or to a particular document. So maybe there is a bid that's very similar to one you're going for now. You might want to just leverage the information from that. You can select the particular folder that way. For today, I'm going to use our entire library, but it's really of value when you have a specific project and your own internal documents to see where that gets leveraged from. And I guess the last part of that is lots of different bids across industries have different requirements as to the templating, formatting, and style guides in which a particular response has to be submitted into for final submission. This is where you would upload a skeleton of that document. So in the template management here, you would upload a style guide, or you could upload a template from a government RFT, for example, and your final submission of the project would be exported into this template at the end. With that being said, I'll jump right into the beginning of the workflow. And I like to start at extract. So extract is where any RFT or RFP documents related to a bid, you would upload them in here. So you can see here, I've got a particular concrete hard stand RFT. It's got a few different things. It's got some drawings, contract forms, and test plans, a few different types of formats of documents as well. And what I'm going to do really quickly is I might just want to extract some things to say, is this a go, no go? Is this a bid, no bid decision? So maybe I want some compliance. I might also want to find out maybe the key bid decision information. And maybe I've got an EOI meeting on Monday and I really need to just get a quick summary of what these bids are all about, I might want a one-page summary. So while that's working in the background, those buttons that you saw me pressing on, these are hot buttons that have been designed from our current clients of things that they're constantly extracting from RFT documents. That being said, they're completely customizable. So you can custom extract a particular thing that you're constantly looking for. For example, maybe it's liability that you want to search for. I've done that one in the past. We can also submit for that. Maybe it's a particular summary that you want to do. You can customize that as well. And this last part, Shred. What Shred will do is it'll look through compliance for certain modality words that you put in. So those wills, shells, musts, compliance pieces, and it'll export them into line items on an Excel spreadsheet. That can be customized as well. So if there's particular words and phrases you're looking for, you can export those into line items through Excel. So just looking at what we've extracted today, you can see 26 seconds ago, we've got liability has been extracted from all the documents that I've popped in to extract. We've got our one-page summary for our EOI meeting. And we've got some critical bid decision information, for example. So these things are completely customizable, but it's really helpful to decide, do we have the resourcing, the capacity, and the experience to go for this job? Is this worth our time? So you've decided, yes, we're going to go for the job. The first place I would go to is projects and build out a new project for that. So AutogenAI, we have our own project management system within the platform. What that looks like is if I go to this concrete hard stand, we will have an overview where you can allocate different sections of the bid to certain contributors. So whether you're centralized or decentralized in your bid team, this will enable you to have permissions and restrictions as to who is involved at any point throughout the bid process. This export project section, this is that template at the start. So whatever format that you needed the bid finally submitted in, when you export the entire project, it'll come through into that template. You can see here we've got deadlines, we've got statuses we can update to writing, a summary, and you can see I've allocated myself to this particular project. So before I jump into those two parts of the project, the compliance and the long form piece, the last bit we have here is an input section. So these inputs are project specific, and these are completely customizable. So I've just got some generic company values here. I've got some tender requirements. These are all things that you can brainstorm. They could be win themes. They could be anything that you find might give you that 1% extra value to your bid, to your submission. You can pop those in here. A way that I like to use extract is actually to extract some key compliance pieces or tender requirements from the RFT and then pop them into my inputs to incorporate later on. I'll show you where that comes full circle, but that's just a workflow that I like to use. And then it's broken up into that compliance and long form. So for the compliance side of things, we have Q&A workbooks. So what that would look like is you would download or import let's say you're going to import a generic workbook. So I'll do one live really quickly for you. Go to downloads, Q&A workbook, and then you would autofill the answers. So where this autofill is searching primarily is that answer bank part at the start. So it's going to look through those rinse and repeat questions for something that might be an exact match. You can see here as it's going, the first answer it's pulled is an exact match. You can see it's come directly from the answer bank. So we can be confident that this is 100% correct. We have verified this previously. This is a gold standard response, and I'm going to approve that particular answer. You can see for the second option, it's come up with a near match. So what it's gone and done is it's found a closely matched answer in the answer bank, reworded that to the new bespoke question, and then it's giving you I guess a 75% final completed version saying near match. So you then would have to go verify, read the question. You can check the sources so you can see exactly what question that it thought was similar. You can find that directly in the answer bank, and then you can then verify that question and submit it back to your answer bank as a growing, evolving pool of gold standard responses. The final one, which we've got here is the library AI. So this is about a 50% complete answer. And what it's done is it's searched the answer bank. It hasn't found anything directly, and it hasn't found anything that's similar. But what it has found is within your own internal library, some stuff that might be of relevance to answering that response. So you can see here, we can go through and we might want to just check where it's pulled this from. Again, we can go through and look at these sources, verify as the human in the loop, that's something that the whole interface of AutogenAI is designed around is having human in the loop. So you're constantly going to have transparency and oversight as to where things have come from, and the ability to verify that to grow and evolve your answer bank. So if we approve that, again, we would add that to our answer bank. So that's from a compliance side of things. Security reviews, anything of a short form nature, you would go through your workbooks. The longer form side of things would be within the project outline. So this is completely customizable as to what those non-pricing criteria questions might look like. So they could be methodologies, they could be what are the local benefits, it could be what are your sustainability initiatives for 2025. Whatever it might be, you can build out your particular folders for different verticals within the team, or particular headings for questions to answer for that particular bid. So I've allocated myself to, for example, the capability statement. And I'm just going to ask a very, very generic question about AutogenAI. How can we help to win more work? So this whole page that we're on here, this is basically broken up into a bunch of transformations that have already been prompted of evidencing and editing of the question. So the first thing I might want to do is just expand and get some words on the paper. I might want 120 words. And you can see here, I'm using 3 different sources of AI. So the first type of AI we use is library, and that's going to be leveraging your own reference material from your library. The internet, likewise, will reference from the internet, and you can have oversight as to the sources that we used in the internet search and the library. And then creative is the third piece. So what creative AI is it's generative AI with 16 different large language models under the hood of AutogenAI. So they're things like ChatGPT, Mistral, you have Claude, there's heaps of those in the background that work. The reason we have 16 in this creative AI process is because certain large language models are better at different applications. So depending on the transformation that you're wanting to do to the text, it's going to pull the best parts from each of the AIs. That being said too, those large language models that it's pulling from, sometimes they have downtime. You might have a bid due. You can't be relying on one at any one point in time. So then we've got all bases covered in this generative AI, creative AI space. The one thing that I would say is I'm not actually going to use it for this particular question because I want my response to be referenced and evidenced and a source of truth. Some of you might be familiar with large language models' ability to hallucinate and be confidently incorrect. That's something we might want to eliminate at this point in our draft process. I'll show you where the creative AI might be useful later on, but for now, I just want it to come from the internet and my library. So I'm just going to generate a response from those 2 referenced and evidence sources of AI. While that's loading, on the right, every time you do a transformation, you're going to be able to get multiple options. So you can see here already up the top, we've found 2 options from the library and 2 from the internet. Each option will show you which sources were used. So if I click on this hyperlink for library, you can see these were the particular sources that were used for this response from the library, and the same goes for the internet. So these were the websites that we use. So myself as the human in the loop, the key decision maker in the bidding process, I can verify whether I think these sources are credible or whether these library sources are ideal. If they aren't, what you can do is go back to your settings, narrow the lens of your library to search a particular folder or a particular document if you want to make sure the library AI is just generating from that particular lens that you've put on. So we've got 4 different options. We might like the first one. We'll pull it across to the left. And now we have a quick response that has been derived from verified sources within our library. There's a lot of different editing tools. I won't go through them all today, but you can see some here, rephrase, we could translate. We've got a few different funny languages in there, but incorporate, this is one I really want to share. So incorporate is where those project specific inputs come back into the piece. So if I click on that, you'll see some of these headings are quite familiar. These are customizable within the project. And maybe the issuer of the tender wants someone who's sustainably focused. So you might want to incorporate that theme back into your writing. Again, you're going to have full oversight as to what the response looks like and where it's come from and what's changed. So if I hit the show difference, you can see which sentences have been removed and how it's incorporated the new sentences with that theme of sustainability throughout. So we might like option 2. Now we have a response really quickly that's incorporated a theme of sustainability, which was what they wanted in the tender. It's also come from a few different library sources that we've verified. On the right-hand side, this is more of the evidencing piece. So you have a lot of things like statistics, examples, case studies. They're very useful for when we build out your own internal library. So you can see the quality of responses that are returned based on what's in your current library. We just have a generic demo environment instance today, so I won't show those buttons now, but we do have the ability to do that. Explain how is another really cool tool for anyone in methodology build out. So you might have a really good piece of writing from maybe it's a couple of subject matter experts or some technical people within the company who haven't actually had experience in building out methodologies of 1, 2, 3. How are we going to actually deliver this project? This button's really good for breaking down what a methodology can look like from a piece of writing. The last couple of buttons I'll share is we do have the ability to self-prompt like any large language model, so you don't lose that ability through AutoGen. So we could say turn the above into a PowerPoint slide. And what that will do is it'll break down how this piece of writing could be structured into a PowerPoint. And then going a step further, we could export and convert to PowerPoint with AI. You can also export into a Word doc or into a templated document, and also the final project into that particular style guide or template that you put into your settings at the beginning. And then the last two buttons here that I'll share is search. So say you had a subject matter expert or graduate jump in and they contributed to this part of the bid. You as a final submission reviewer were reading through their information and said, Jack, look, this is great. I love it, but I don't know where it's come from. You can reverse engineer any bit of text to see the sources that we used from that, just to have that full oversight, credibility. Do we verify where this has come from? It's also really good for if there's an inaccuracy in some of the writing and you identify that. It helps with document hygiene. You can go back and find the inaccuracy within your own documents and remove it from the source. But yeah, you have the ability to reverse engineer and find where the sources have come from. And the final piece, this is a really, really popular tool with particularly a lot of our construction clients. It's called tone of voice. So what it helps with is providing a consistent brand and tone of voice across the writing submission. So the example one we have today is a Shakespearean tone of voice. I'll let you guys have a quick read through some of those options to see how it's adapted the writing. But it's really useful for if there's one person constantly going through and making everything sound like it's come from a singular source. That's quite a timely process. This button we develop and customize with yourself as to what your brand and your tone of voice would look like, so that at the end of the submission, you would apply that tone of voice across the writing. Again, you're going to get multiple options, and if you don't like them, you can always regenerate for some new options. Moving into that submission and final review phase, we do have a review capability here. So this comes with a few different predefined criteria, but where I find it very valuable is being a bit more specific. So when I'm in the extract phase of that go, no go, I would also go and extract what those questions are, those non-pricing weighted criteria questions, and I'd pop them into the review section. So I'd pop the question in here and I'd extract the requirements and pop them in here as well. And I'd review the question against the requirements. So what the platform will give you is suggestions on how you could improve that. So one example might be, maybe they were looking for someone who was sustainably minded. You forgot to incorporate the theme of sustainability. It might prompt you to suggest that you could improve the writing by meeting one of the requirements of sustainability, and that might trigger a response to go, oh, that's right, I completely forgot. I need to incorporate that back into the writing, or I should have made that a project-specific output from the get-go. Really useful for that process as well. There's two, I guess, unique features we also have that are kind of put into different stages of the workflow depending on how you guys operate for your bids. The first is called Ideator. So this is where, circling back, this is where that creative AI, the generative AI part of AutogenAI is really valuable, I find, for the large language models, is brainstorming, is ideation. So we might have a question like this that we've never experienced before. And I might want to just brainstorm some ideas as to how I can get off a blank page. So what I've done is I've just used creative AI, and I've also provided a bit of a context to this. So maybe it's a local government bid, and I want it to be really strategic in language. So those contexts that I provide is just going to shape the hierarchy of responses that I get. So I'll do all three live now to show you what they would look like. But on the left, you're just going to get 5 different ideas come up as headline themes. You can then pull those across to the right-hand side, structure a paragraph from those themes. But what I like to do is use creative AI to come up with the ideas. And then when I structure my paragraph, I expand upon those ideas from my own library. So I still know that the content is credible and it's come from a reference source, but maybe the way in which I thought about it or got to that idea was leveraging the power of all those different large language models. So you can see here, again, if it's come from the library, you'll see where it's come from. If it's come from the internet, you can get the link, but creative won't have a link. So if you like an idea, you pull it across. If you don't like an idea, you remove it, and they constantly generate based on the hierarchy of context you've provided. From there, you can go and generate paragraphs, and you can expand upon these from your library. So that's ideation. The second part, it's a bit of a abstract way in which people would incorporate into their workflow. I like to do it sometimes at the start. A lot of people use this for things such as like writing different reports or tech reports or case studies. So stuff that's internal for project delivery, they'll quite often use the research capability. So really quickly, you can just see there, that's the question I've asked. These were the headline themes that I've identified, and these are the paragraphs generated. I would do one or two things. I might go and reverse engineer and say, where did this come from? Or I might just go and delete it and use the headline theme itself and expand upon that from my library. There's multiple different workflows that people use to derive their responses, which is the really cool thing about the platform. There's no set right way to do it. And I'm always finding new ways that people are being creative with it as well, which is very exciting. But yeah, going into the last part, Research Assistant, really, really powerful tool. I like it personally for interrogating my own library or interrogating a particular document within my own repository. It can be used on the internet as well, quite commonly, but you can see here, you can select where the Research Assistant is going to look. So it could be the internet. You can also edit a particular domain within the internet. So you might want to only search a couple of websites. The same can be said for the library. You can edit your library and look for a particular document, or you can search your answer bank if there was a common gold standard answer that you wanted to find. What I will share is one I did just prior, which was a generic internet search for compliance. And I've made it by state. So I've made it a variable of state. And you can see here for each response I've got, I have the sources, so the library sources and the internet sources that we use to derive the response. I have a completely unique response that is in-text referenced that I can directly put into a report or into a bid. And again, you're going to have oversight as to where each part of that writing has come from. And then again, it's just done it for each of those variable states we can see here. What I'll do live with you really quickly is I might want to interrogate for example, a construction program. So I have a generic construction program here, and it's really just a Gantt chart for anyone who's not too familiar with a construction program. Apply that. So I'm just searching that program, and I might want to really quickly list all the demolition tasks and dates. Doesn't matter if I've spelt that wrong. And what it's going to do is it's going to just search that particular construction program and pull out all the key milestones and dates for demolition tasks. So the power of the tool goes beyond just documents. There's also the ability to do what's called image parsing. So this would be a case of that. Conscious of time, this might take a little bit, but I'll just go to one I've done in the past. And you can see here were the list all the tasks. So these are the tasks involved with the demolition project. And I think I've done one prior that was about dates as well. Here we go. So you can see the dates, start and end date of certain demolition tasks for that particular Gantt chart in that particular construction program. So holistically, that's pretty much the end-to-end high-level demonstration for you all today. I think we did have a few questions in the chat. I'll stop sharing now and answer those. What have we got? Okay, so we had a question saying, can AI read images? As we are a small company and have a lot of tenders we work on, they are done by engineers to create methodologies on electrical drawings. Yes, so we can do, that's kind of what I was alluding to at the end there, and I hope I answered your question towards the end. We have the ability to do image parsing. So what that looks like is any image that has words written on it. So it could be drawings with words, it could be test plans, it could be a construction program, a Gantt chart, anything that has written words on it, it'll be able to extract those words and variances and changes in the words between documents. We also have the ability to do document comparison. So if you had two different drawings that had words on them, you could compare the two drawings and summarize findings from that. So yes, we can read images. It's called image parsing, and that's done in the extract function, but also within the research assistant. And the last question we had is, how can we ensure that stored data is kept up to date? So in terms of integration, that would be a way in which you would manage your own SharePoint integration. So we have a live integration, so that would constantly update live. What it would also look like is just how you would manage your own library. So I guess some people can work retrospectively to organize their library through AI and find information from AutogenAI to then segment and break down what their folders look like, or identify anything that was incorrect that needs to be eliminated from the source. But in terms of how you can make sure it's kept up to date, it is a live SharePoint integration. So if you have SharePoint, that'll constantly update as it goes through. I think also another point on data that I want to touch on is security. So all your security information, any information with AutogenAI is stored in shores. So in AWS warehouses in Sydney and backed up in Melbourne. So all data is stored on shore. We do work with tier ones across the defense construction consulting space, both here in Australia and in the US. So we comply with all their security requirements, and any of your inputs will never become someone else's outputs. I see, are you ISO certified? Yes, we are. I will put down into the link our trust center, and you can see all our accreditations that we have in there. But yes, so none of your inputs will become anyone else's outputs. I think that's important to also mention that every time that you're performing a transformation on the platform, it's a brand new transformation. So it's going to seek out and retrieve information from your library or from the internet each time that you perform it. It's not going to constantly learn and retain that information. So nothing that you put in this system can be accessed by anyone else. Any other questions just before we wrap up? No worries at all. Fantastic. So anyone who's really interested in that security side, I suggest you look at our Trust Center available online. And I will make sure that we have a recording to this link if there's anyone you'd like to share within the company internally. But yeah, if you have any questions that you weren't prepared to or happy to ask in the chat, feel free to email me at jack.brandon, that's BRANDON, @autogenai.com. And I'll be sure to answer those for you. But I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you learned about some of the new cool things that AI can do, particularly in that bid writing space. But thank you for joining, and yeah, have a great day. Cheers, everyone.